Howdy, everybody. Welcome back to Ireland Bound. Uh, so I know I'm running a little bit late. Uh, Things have been a little crazy around here. Had a few problems that came up, and well, let's just say that I'm finally able to do this week's video. Um, and this, of course, last time it was uh, a friend of mine's genealogy connection, something that connected her with someone who was famous in American history. Well, I don't have anything quite that thrilling, but I do have a love story. If you didn't see in the title, is Dick and Marie, a love story. Of course, that's my grandparents. That's my mom's mom and dad. And let's see, if I remember when I left off in chapter 9, I think I had told you about my grandfather and his brother. They had gone to work for a little bit as lumberjacks. And I think I had dropped the hint that they had started to work for the railroad. Um, so that's where I'm going to pick up with the story. Uh, like I said, Grandpa and his brother, Neil, they had gone to work for a railroad company that was up in the panhandle of Texas in an area. Um, basically this railroad ran through what is historically known as the XIT Ranch. And for any of y'all who are not familiar with the XIT, it was at one time the largest ranch in the world. It covered 10 counties in the state of Texas, and all 10 counties were up there in the panhandle. Starting up there at the topmost area of the panhandle. And it was like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. They just like two columns straight down the side there of the Texas panhandle. But there was, like I said, there's a railroad that was being built in that area, and my grandfather and his brother, they were working for that railroad. At the same time, my grandmother, one of her brothers, was working for the railroad. I don't remember which brother. She had, I think it was three, but it was one of the brothers. He was working for it also. She was living with him, and basically she was taking care of him. She would cook his meals and wash his clothes, and all this stuff. Do the things that needed, to make sure that he was well taken care of. Like a good little sister does. And he worked the railroad during the day, and he'd come home, and they would have, of course, their evenings. Well, uh, my grandmother had had a failed marriage. Um, Back then, things weren't talked about as much as are now. But the gentleman that my grandmother was married to, uh, let's just say he had a few problems that he needed some time to work them out. And of course, his parents had told my grandmother, said, look, says, we'll take care of him. Says, you just go, you live your life, and don't worry about him. Said, hopefully we will get everything straightened out. And if not, then, you know, he's our son, and we will deal with him as we need to. And so she left when, like I said, she was living with her brother. And she was dating some, not too, you know, much with anybody. She just was, kind of feeling things around. Well, my grandfather had seen her, and Grandpa liked her. But there was a guy that she'd had 2, 3 dates with, and they had planned another one. Well, Grandpa, like I said, he saw her and he thought, I like her. I want to date her. And my grandmother flat out told him no. She said, no way. She says, I've already got someone that I'm seeing, and I want to follow through with him. And my grandfather was like, "Oh, we'll be dating." And of course, he was like a young kid. He was like, it's gonna be my way or else. Well, my grandmother, she didn't believe him. She's like, "Yeah, okay, I'm seeing someone else. I've got date with him." And my grandfather looked at her and said, "I can guarantee you," he says, "I will show up Sunday or Saturday at your door for a date." And he said, "And when I do," he says, "you'll be going with me." And my grandmother, she was like, "Yeah, right, whatever," and she just took him as a hot-headed kid and didn't pay him any more attention. Well, my grandfather, he did not have a vehicle. And I mean, he had lived on a ranch for all of his life, and then he went up and had worked in another part of the country, and then, of course, like I said, he was now working this railroad. And um, let's just say my grandfather had a reputation. He and his brother both actually had a reputation, but my grandfather had a bigger reputation. And when I say a bigger reputation, I mean, um, it you know how stories get around, especially in the workplace, about people. Things get said, and uh, well, uh, let's just say that people started finding out pretty fast that Grandpa had been taking care of himself and on his own since he was 12. And so they already knew he had that reputation. Well, he had another reputation that he had earned while working on the railroad. Um, they were laying tracks. And back then, it wasn't like it is now. They didn't have all this big equipment. I know I saw a YouTube video of this guy that they were changing out like the cross ties, and this machine was like moving these things without any problem. It'd dig out some of the rock. It would take the cross beam. It would pull it out. It put another one in. It set everything back down. I mean, it was doing all this stuff, which would take probably 20 men to do back 100 years ago. But like I said, they were working on the railroad, and they had these big kegs. They were like humongous kegs that held 50 pounds of spikes. Okay, if people who haven't seen railroad spikes, they are big. They are long, they are heavy. I mean, they're probably like about this big around, and they are heavy, heavy, heavy. They are made to go down into this metal, and they're supposed to hold tracks in place when you have these several ton trains coming through. And each of these kegs, like I said, they weighed about 50 pounds approximately. Well, most of these men, they would grab these kegs, they'd pick them up, and they'd start walking with them. Of course, they'd pick them up like this, and they'd just be huffing, they'd be puffing, and carrying these. Not my grandfather, and not his brother. They were both stout little Irishmen. They were both show offs. I think it's the Rogers blood in them. If you want to be honest, Grandpa and Uncle Neil, they would walk up to the train that would be carrying the spikes, and they would have the guy lay the spike canisters down on their side. Where the rolling, where they could roll, uh, and they'd have them lay two down. Grandpa and Uncle Neil would back up to it. They would put their hands inside the top things, pull it up onto their shoulders. Remember, each of these are 50 pounds. 50 pounds, 50 pounds. They would carry 100 pounds at a time. My grandfather was not a large man. Um, I believe my mom told me one time he was 5'9", 8 or 9, something like that. He was not 10. I'm pretty sure he was 5'9". He was a short little fella. I mean, but he was stout. He wasn't fat. He was never fat by any stretch of the means, but he was stout and he knew how to work and he understood certain things like how to carry stuff like that. So, like I said, they would get them laid here. They just slip their hands into the top handles. They get slid out, and then they would carry these 100-pound kegs. 250s make 100. They carry them up, and they would go however far. Half the time it was up a hillside. Uh, that was the cat tail. I've got too many cats around here. Um, but anyways, like I said, they would carry these. Half the time they were carrying them up a hill, and these other guys that, like I said, they're carrying them like this, and they're, oh, and Grandpa and Uncle Neil, they got, I mean, they're just walking along, whistling and acting like it's no big deal. Hey, 100 pounds, no problem. I can do that in my sleep. And so they had a reputation for being pretty tough. I mean, it takes a lot of strength to do that. So, like I said, they already had this reputation. I've got a cat trying to mess with my camera here. Uh, like I said, I've got cats. Sometimes I got too many of them. But anyway, so they would, like I said, they were carrying these, and so people knew that they were not ordinary men. Um, leave the camera alone, girl. Leave it alone. Leave it alone. Don't you touch it. Sometimes you gotta keep going no matter what. Even when you get kitty cat tails in your camera. Keep going, keep going. Okay, there we go. uh, but so anyways, like I said, Grandpa had a pretty good reputation, being an adult at the age of 12, taking care of himself, living on his own, uh, and carrying 100-pound kegs. So, like I said, he had a pretty good reputation. Well, time came around for the date. Grandpa walked up to the door, knocked at Grandma and Uncle's door. Of course, I opened it up, and Grandpa was standing there and with the bouquet of flowers and said, "Miss Marie, I am here to take you on a date." Standing behind him was the guy that Grandma was supposed to go out with a very large black eye. And Grandma kind of looked around at this guy and looked back at Grandpa, and she was like, okay. you know. Now, this is the really funny thing. Not only did Grandpa steal this guy's date, but he also had him with his car, because Grandpa didn't have a car, had him with his car drive him and Grandma around. This guy was the chauffeur for him. I was sitting there. I was sitting there thinking, yeah, I can see Grandpa doing that. So not only did he steal this guy's girl, but he made the guy watch him take her on a date. I don't know what became of the guy, but of course, Grandma and Grandpa ended up getting married. Uh, that from that moment until my grandfather died, they were married. I want to say 43 years. I would have to look again to remember for certain. But well, let's see. 30s. Um, maybe. It was less than 50 years. It might have been 48 years. It's been so long since I've done the math. I would have to, like I said, I'd have to try and find the information for when they got married. I mean, I know what month, I just don't know what year. But anyway, so they were married less than 50, more than 40 years. They had two kids together. And when Grandpa died, it really broke Grandma's heart. Um, I remember it all too well because he died just a few days before my ninth birthday. I was 8 years old, fixing to turn nine in just a few days. And I remember when he passed away, it was like one of the saddest days of my life. They had the funeral like the day before my birthday. And then I remember the next weekend we tried having the birthday party, and Grandma came, but she was definitely hurting. I mean, her beloved Dick had just died, and she never really, I don't think, was really happy again. She lived for about 9 more years. I mean, she saw more of her grandkids be born, and her great, well, actually I was the last of the grandkids. It was the great grandkids. But she saw great grandchildren born. In fact, there was one that was born right before she died. But her life was never the same. She didn't have the happiness. She didn't have the desire to do things. She didn't have the desire that she used to. I mean, like I said, he was the light of her life. She followed him to California when he went out there and worked, training the women and the guys on how to weld and use rivet guns. If you'll remember I believe it was chapter 5 where I talked about him, he trained the Rosie the Riveters, the women, and like I said, some men who weren't able to go overseas to fight. He trained them how to build the ships. He trained them on how to do it right so that way our men were protected over there. She followed him over there. She followed him back to Texas. Wherever he went, she went with him. I mean, if he went to work, of course, that was a different thing. But she was very happy to have dinner on the table when he came home. She was very happy to keep house for him. She was happy to take care of him. I mean, of course, as I have said, he in the one with my grandfather, he had a rough start in his life. He was about 5 or 6 when his mother passed away, and for the most part left him an orphan. Grandma was kind of in the same thing. Grandpa was raised by someone who wasn't his parents. Grandma, it was the same thing. Her mother had died when she was little. I think she was about 3, maybe 4. Her dad was so sick that he couldn't take care of 6 children, and so he sent Grandma and her siblings out to foster families. She was raised by someone else entirely, also. Um, Neither one of them used their birth names. My grandfather had been born as Edgar, and he resented his father. He was angry at his father, and he chose a new name. He chose to be called Dick Rogers instead of Edgar. Um, Beardsley, that was the last name. It was a name that he chose. Grandma was the same way. She hated the name Goldie. She chose to be called Marie, because of the fact that, her father couldn't take care of her. He had all the kids' names changed. They were supposed to have their first names But then, instead of their original middle names, it got changed to like the family name. She had been born a McElroy. So she, instead of being Goldie, Goldie Ann McElroy, she became Goldie McElroy Carruthers. So she was going by a different name that she hadn't been born to. And of course, she stopped using Goldie and chose the name Marie. Like I said, they had a lot in common. They both understood what it was like to lose family. They both understood what it was like to grow up without their mother or their father. Um, they both just they got this. They understood each other. You know, they were soulmates. They understood each other so well. Uh, and Grandpa would do anything for Grandma too. I know Mama told me one time they had been to the grocery store, and Grandma had picked up a can of stuff, and she looked at it. Of course, turned around, looked at it a couple of times, and put it back because she realized it was something she did not want. Well, Grandpa thought it was something she wanted. She just didn't think she could afford it. And so he bought it anyways, put it into the thing, got it home. Grandma was not happy. She she looked at him and she goes, "I put this back because I did not want it." It's like it wasn't a fact of whether I thought we could afford it or not. She says, "I didn't want it." But and he was like, "Oh well, I'll take it back to the store." She goes, "Oh no, no, no." So you're gonna learn your lesson with this. And she made him eat it. She's probably the only person that could have made him eat it too. After that, if she put something down, he did not pick it up and put it in the cart. Uh, Anything Grandma wanted, Grandpa was more than happy to get it for her. If she even made a hint that she might like something, he would go to the end of the earth for her to get it. Like I said, it's one of those rare love stories that you hear about. Two people that are so similar that they understand each other. Their hearts just beat in the same tone, the same rhythm. I mean, it's not like they're like this. It's like they're both beating together. Um, and like I said, Grandma, she was never happy. She lived 9 more years. Yeah, she lived until I was almost out of high school. In fact, I believe she died my junior year, if I remember right. So she lived for a while, but it was never happy. She did not have her dick with her anymore. She just my mother put it very precisely one time. She said he reached the point that she was just sitting there waiting to die. And this is one of my little boys back here. Isn't he adorable? Hey, son, go over here and play. That is, which one are you again? You're not Kingsford, you're Yosemite. That's Yosemite. Uh, he was dumped off on me about a week and a half ago, and he has not learned his manners yet. Have you Yosemite, huh? No. It, yeah. But anyway, so like I said, she just, she did not, she was not happy without him. She loved him so much, she was not happy without her beloved husband with her. You know, I wish more people had that kind of love. I wish people understood what it meant to have that kind of love. But people nowadays, they don't care as much. but they did. And like I said, they had 2 kids, 4 grandkids, and I want to say one, two, three, four, oh, either 4 or 5 great grandkids by the time that Grandma passed away. So I mean, they left a pretty good legacy behind them. They left they left a lot of good pictures and stories too. I know I showed some of the pictures. I believe it was in Grandpa's, maybe some in Grandma's um, album of pictures. You know, if you want to go back, you know, go back a little bit, look at chapter 5, and I believe chapter 8 was Grandma's. Go back and take a look at some of their pictures. Cats are rude. But go back, take a look at some of their pictures, and I mean, there's one picture, and it's the one that I used for the intro. That they both were just laughing and so happy, and they enjoyed each other's company, and you know, anytime one was around, the other one was just lit up like you wouldn't believe. But anyways, like I said, it was a love story. It's I can't say it's an epic love story because it didn't take that long, but you know, how else can you bring down a lifetime of love between 2 people? Well, anyways, I guess that's it. Oh, also, while I'm thinking about it, one of my next videos coming up is actually going to be a bit of a Christmas special. It's going to be a little different. I'm going to be over at a friend's house filming. Also, too, as far as family stories go, this is going to be the last one for a while. I'm not sure how long. It's just kind of going to depend on, uh, you know, how fast I can get back to more stories, or if I can get some more good stories. Some of them I'm having trouble remembering. I know I've heard so many of them that they kind of run together, so I'm going to have to see which ones I can remember. But I'm going to get more into some of the genealogy research. Uh, you know, some of y'all, I'm going to show how to build a family tree. Uh, I'm going to be using some sites. We're going to kind of explore some of these things, um, getting more into the family history and also too into the culture of Ireland. And that's part of what the Christmas episode is going to be. It's going to be about the culture, understanding a little bit more some of the traditions, some of the things. Um, but anyways, I guess that's it. And also, too, if y'all haven't already done it, I hope y'all subscribe to the channel. It's that big red button down there. Um, if I remember right, they've changed some of that around to where all you do is when you hit the button, it automatically sets it to all. That way, you don't have to do it. If you got the old system, you do still need to hit the all indicator that you want to get all of the stuff that I post. Also, too, you know, thumbs up. You know, let me know that you like the video. Let YouTube know that you like the video too, and you know, leave a comment. You know, maybe y'all have got some great love stories. You and your loved one. Maybe your parents or your grandparents or an aunt and uncle. You know, share some love stories with me. You know, let me know some of the great people in your family who were the great lovers. You know, the ones that everyone's like, oh yeah, those two until the end of time. But anyways, I hope y'all have a great weekend, and remember, subscribe, comment, and give me a thumbs up. So I'll talk to everybody later. Bye bye.